Plenty excited about that. Welcome to our 3-year anniversary episode of the Sound Matters radio show. I'm thrilled right now. I have another guest. This gentleman right here sitting in front of me is one of my mentors, one of my greatest friends, and a guy that I just look up to so much. His name is Jeffrey Swanberg. He's a Rockford native. He's a former administrator at Rockford Career College. Used to be called Rockford Business College. Before that, it was Brown's Business College. It's Jeff Swanberg. Mr. Swanberg. I call him Mr. Swanberg because he deserves that respect. He's just such a great man. Thanks for coming on the show and celebrating the 3-year anniversary show with me. It's so great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and I'm humbled to be here. To be a part of your 3-year show. I loved you as an instructor and person at Rockford Career College. Did a great job. Your students worshipped and adored you.
Well, you hired me, and so I always am indebted to you for that. I had a good run at the school altogether. All told, I was about 10 years there as an instructor and then an administrator myself. Enjoyed the heck out of that, learned a lot, and it's all because of you, and you taught me so much there. But I just wanted to have you on this show. I'm just going to tease this because we only got a few minutes with you today, but we're going to have you, I'm going to invite you on the air right now. I'm going to have you back on a future episode where we'll do a proper, long-form conversation with you to kind of mine out your rich history of the Rockford music scene in the area. I mean, can you give us just a high-level snapshot? You were in bands. Your brother was in bands. There's documentaries about your brother's bands going back. You're talking late 60s into the 70s. Can you give us like the high points of what your background is?
You have done your homework.
I have.
Well, like I said, prior to my being in Berkeley Medium with Larry Merriman and Jan Capone, fabulous drummer who's a studio musician.
Yeah.
And has his own group. Just worked within and without bands forever, starting in about 1964, 65 with my brother's band, and then he was with Rick Pemberton and Brad Carlson in a group that no one's ever heard of, but I got their WROK mini card from 65, 66.
This very station?
This very station. Doug McDuff with all of his music at the Sherwood Lodge, and just having a great time in Rockford, enjoying the music. I mean, Rockford is a wonderful home of very talented musicians, songwriters, etc., and I was proud to be a part of it, and still on the perimeter.
Well, you still are, and you go way back, and I know you have way more stories than we have time for sure today, but we'll want to get into it in a future episode. But there's a documentary out there about your brother's band, right? What was the name of that band, and then just a quick on them and the history of that band and the documentary?
Well, the band is Stone Front, and led by Larry Merriman, talented musician, songwriter, singer, and my brother was with that band for quite some time. They left Rockford and left because I was in my senior year at Northern Illinois University. I had enough brains to know that I was not going to be a rock and roll star. And so they left, went to Detroit, living in a 48-room mansion, beautiful time, toured with Black Sabbath, etc. And I had the pleasure of graduating from NIU and then moving up there. And they let me live there for a while.
Did you work with them, or did you?
No, I just listened.
You just listened and hung out?
Sat back and enjoyed the mansion and all of its.
And so the documentary about Stone Front is based on that time there, and then that mansion and all of that.
That's right, and their production, they had their final mix at Abbey Road Studio in England.
What years was this happening around?
About 1972. I got up there in late 71, 72, and it was wonderful time.
Very good. So this documentary, it's out there on YouTube or where how can we see it? Can we see it?
Well, I have a copy, and I'd be privileged after I ask Mr. Merriman and other people if we can share that. I think they'd be happy to do that.
Okay, well that would be good. And Mr. Merriman, I know his name. I've not had the chance to meet him yet, but it'd be great to get him on here too sometime, maybe with you, talk about this and this period. I think it's fascinating. It's music history. It's interesting. It's ties to Rockford, clearly, obviously, but it just sort of, I'm just fascinated with that and the journey behind all of that. What was so magical about that time and that group as we get close to wrapping up this segment?
The magic of the time, it spoke for itself. It was a time when there were great bands, and a lot of the great bands kept coming through Detroit, and whenever they'd play their gig in Detroit, they would come over to the house and play at the house from whenever they got there till sunrise and people left. Very calm, very nice. Peter Walker, one of the greatest classical guitarists in the world, lived there for some time, and he's on Vanguard Records, early recording. He's still recording.
Was this kind of like the Midwest version of some of the stuff in the folklore we hear about, like the Laurel Canyon days out in Hollywood and L.A. back in those days? Was that kind of, akin to that, with a communal vibe and everybody coming together?
A big communal vibe. It was. There were probably 40, 45 of us living at the house.
Wow.
The mansion was so big. It was built by Garfield Wood, who invented the hydraulic lift and consequently had more money than God and was a great Gatsby at the time. 48-room mansion with an Olympic swimming pool in the basement.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
That sounds like a pretty fun time, and I'll bet the stories from those times were endless and maybe some unmentionable. Am I right on that?
A few unmentionable.
Of course. This was the early 70s after all.
You're forgetting. Right? We were rocking and rolling.
We were rocking and rolling. Yes, I can only imagine. And man, what I would give to go back and be able to be a fly on the wall in those days. I bet it was something to behold.
Well, my room was in a closet. That's how big the mansion was.
And you didn't mind for a minute, did you?
Not for a minute.
Not for a minute.
Loved every minute of it.
That's really cool. I understand, too, you're a pretty good harmonica player yourself, Mr. Jeffrey Swanberg. Is that true?
Yes, I am.
Did you ever jam with the band?
Yes. And like I said, prior to the band leaving for Detroit, our band, Berkeley Medium, was in Rockford. We signed with Dutcher in Madison, and consequently all of our gigs are in frat houses.
There you go. We're going to have you back. It's Jeffrey Swanberg talking about the band Stonefront, is rich Rockford history. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Mr. Swanberg.
Thank you, Tom. It's
We're going to have you
pleasure.
back. All right. We'll be back for hour 2 of Sound Matters 3-year anniversary show. Don't go away.